Bless me, listeners, for I have gone dormant. It has been 22 days since my last podcast. 22 days. It's almost as if I'm a college football playoff bowl team with all the time you have off between your last game and the college football playoff, which actually begins today on January 1st, 2018, first day of our newest year. I wish you all a happy, happy new year and many great things to come. It's the blank slate. We're going to be different versions of ourselves. We're going to learn everything that we did wrong in 2017, which I think in America we could say was a lot of things. And we're going to go forward with open hearts, full hearts, open eyes, all the things you want to be open to before we get them closed, and do a lot of great things in the new year. 2017 ended up being very much a tough year for me and my small family here. I talked about what my wife and I went through on right around Halloween. So we had a tough last quarter of the year. There was a lot of happiness going into that last quarter when we were on the cusp of having our second child, and that went for naught. So there's going to be a lot to learn from that. And it's a painful process, and it's just absolutely, it's heartbreaking and it's heartrending and hard, all those things. It's really hard, and it takes a long, long time. I don't want to say to get over, because you just don't get over it, but it takes a long time for it not to be kind of in your mind. And you even find when it's not in your mind, it's just always there. It's kind of has you in a place where you're just not, you're almost just not happy. You're fine. You're getting by. You have your 3-year-old, you have your toddler, you have your life with your wife, and you have the holidays and all that, but you're not amazingly enthusiastic about every day. And you really should be. And I don't like to have any negative thoughts about the day, and you don't try to, but it just kind of is in your being, the way the cold gets into your skin right now. When it's so cold that there's really only so many layers you can put on, there's only so much gloves and hats can do, and if you're exposed to it for more than 15 or 20 minutes, it's just going to find you. And that's very much the way kind of grief is. It's sort of the way this cold weather hits you. You can go into the day thinking the best and having the best of intentions with what you're going to do with that day, and it just finds you. It's just there. It's ever present. You're waiting for the nice weather, figuratively, and you're just seeking better times, and you're knowing that all in your training, all of these 35 years, everything you've learned, that you will find a way to come through it. You will have better days, and it's that hope that each day it does get a little better. And so for that, I am kind of happy to see 2017 behind us. It's all just numbers. It's all just calendars made up by people thousands and thousands of years ago. But it's important. It's what we kind of benchmark our days on, and we benchmark our progress. And so I'm happy to see the new year. I think there's going to be a lot of great things happening in 2018, and you're always around the bend from something happening. And you got to do things to make it happen. It's not just going to happen, but you're always around the bend from some new opportunity happening. I mean, I remember I was sitting at home very shortly after we got that terrible news, and a friend of mine from the past reached out and said, "Hey, I got this thing I really want you to be involved in." And I got involved with it, and when I can talk about it in the future, I will. It's a really cool little product, and it was not something that I had on my radar in any way. But having worked with this guy for over 10 years and knowing him and him knowing me and knowing what I'm good at and my specialties and where I could fit in, he thought about me. And he was the one who made the thing happen, but he thought about me and saw a place where maybe I could contribute to this. And so that's something. You just never know when something's coming. You put yourself out there, you try, and you just keep pounding it, and you keep going one foot after the other, and eventually things happen. When you're aggressive, things happen. I'm not overly aggressive, but when you're aggressive and you're always moving forward, you're always reading, you're always consuming, you're always researching, you're writing, you're producing, things will happen. Things will happen. I always like to say to turn things that you're doing into something. This podcast has allowed me to do that. I can talk sports. I can talk tech. I can talk current events. I can talk, personal journal type stuff. I can talk parenting. All we are is something that could be interesting to some form of an audience. And when you look at America, which has 300 million people in it, there's going to be a meaningful amount of people who intersect with all the different things that you might like and you might say. And for me, that can be 500 to 1,000 people per episode. These things I'm thinking at the end of each week, and I'm sorry again, I've sinned. It's been 22 days since my last podcast, but when you're creating and putting things out there and you're moving forward, thinking about the ways that all of these things you do can be kind of mixed into a cohesive story, it kind of centers and organizes you and checklists your life in a way that brings all these things you do to the fore. And it kind of makes you a player in your own movie in some ways. And that's a good thing. It's a good skill to have. Storytelling is the kind of zeitgeist right now. It's just the way that people think that there's going to be money made in the world. And it's the way people want to have information disseminated to them. But I'm trying. 2018 is going to be a year like that. And I tell you, it's been cold. It has been so cold. We're dealing with waking up in the morning and I look on my watch, where I always see my temperature, and your mind is used to a certain temperature when you get to different points of the year. When it's the summer and you see it get up to 3 digits, you're like, oh, that's crazy. And when it's the winter and you see it get down below or to low single digits or to the negative, when you see that little negative sign in there, that makes you pause and think a little bit about it. I mean, how crazy is it that many people in the country and in the world, I mean, if you're not living in Florida or you're not living in certain parts of California or Arizona, people across the world routinely live in places that can have a 100-degree swing in the year. How are our bodies meant to handle this? And how did New York City, I always think this, how did New York City become the epicenter of everything? A place where you can have a 100-degree swing in temperature, where it can be 100 in the winter or the summer, and it can be 0 degrees or less than 0 in the winter. How crazy is that? 100-degree swing, and our bodies handle that over the course of a year. I don't even know how it works. Like, why wasn't Miami set up as the New York? I mean, then we could all be in a place where the weather is always beautiful. Although there is something to be said about a place where the weather is always the same. It doesn't give you that kind of frame of reference of the changes. So every day is just another day. It's Groundhog Day. The weather's beautiful, and you almost root for the other places in the country to have bad weather so that you can kind of take your selfie and say, hey, I'm in shorts, I'm here. Good friend down there in South Florida, Ernest Christian, who's been on this podcast, he probably will hear this and kind of laugh and have a little chuckle at that. He lives in that. And I think sometimes when you're in it, you kind of forget that there's weather happening around the country because all you have is your reality. You wake up each day like anybody else and put your clothes on and go about your day and drive home at night and be with your kids or be with your family. And that's about all you know. And so that sameness becomes just what it is. I mean, we become very much inured to our surroundings. It becomes normal. When you have the seasons, it's put in stark relief. When you live in a place that doesn't change, it's sometimes hard to appreciate when it doesn't change unless you are unless you're kind of put in contact with those crazy weather patterns. But we have that 100-degree swings. I mean, it's crazy when you stop and think about it. And it has been so cold. Negative temperatures are just insanely cold. My summer home, my family's summer home that we've had for, 35? So about 35 years, they've had a house up there. And my mom had gone there with her family many years before. It's like right up on St. Lawrence River. It's extremely cold. I was looking at those temperatures, and I can actually sit here and think I'm in warm weather because you're looking at those normal temperatures and it's like, oh, it'll be a low of -17 today. And you're just like, wow, holy moly. And there's not a lot going on up there. It's a summer destination. And so people who are living there at this time of year, they are survivors, if you could say that. But this week, it's been Christmas week. It's been the New Year's week. It's been the normal holiday season. And I took So it's nice when Christmas and New Year's are on a Monday because you get that built-in day off. And I had a couple of vacation days to play with, a couple of sick and personal days. And sick and personal days don't roll over in my company, so you got to use those or lose them. And so what I did was I took Tuesday after Christmas as a personal day, and then I took 3 vacation days, which still leaves me with a couple to roll into the next year until the end of March. So I took those to get the full sweep of the week. And when you combine that across the time with the weekends, which I always like to do, it gave me 10 days where I was not going to have to go to work. Now, I did have to do quite a bit of work. I was working 2 hours a day, maybe 3 hours at times, doing client calls and calls with India. And we got a big launch coming actually next week. Not the best time to plan a launch the week after New Year's, but the necessities of the project meant that we really needed to do that and make it happen. So there was a lot more work than you might be doing typically during that Christmas week. And so I did do some, but I wasn't going to work and I was home. And 10 days at home gives you a chance to really refresh everything and to reset the gauges. And that's kind of what this time of year should be about. You should use that as a natural kind of springboard into the next year. Almost like you use with the summer sometimes. It's kind of interesting the way we need these times to decompress at the different points of the year. Like we can't even make it half a year before we need our next decompression time. That's how hard we work. We're working so hard that we need decompression points, like full weeks or 2 weeks at a time. And I got a good 10 days here. I was looking forward to it a lot. My family is not the type of family that gets together a lot during the year, and we really have different members in different places at different points in life. You have me, who's the oldest. I'm married with my 3-year-old. You have my next up brother, who's 4 years younger than I am, so he's about 31 now. He has a wife and 2 kids, both under 3. Then you have my brother Tom, who's 24, and then you have my sister Maeve, who is 20. Did she turn 20? She'll turn 22. So different points in life, different places, different perspectives. My brother Tom was working at a kind of a boutique hotel up in Hudson, New York, and so we never see him. He's really just been up there working 60 hours a week and just living life, doing what he should. I mean, he's having a good time, but that said, we just never get together. And it really kind of has hit me of late that if you live in basically a similar place, so for a lot of my family members, we live in northern New Jersey, you should really do your best to live pretty close to each other. Because where I live, I'm in Sparta. Then it's 45 minutes to where my parents live, who are northeast in Mahwah. And then from where I am, it's like an hour southeast to get to my brother Mike, who's in Westfield. And then that triangle completes itself at about an hour trip between Westfield and Mahwah. When you have your lives, you have a lot going on. You get to the end of a weekend, you've been commuting all week. You really don't want to get up and commute again. And those going in those directions and at those time horizons, that's a pretty long trip after you've been commuting an hour each way for me. And my brother commutes, I think, about 30 to 40 minutes. Funny part is my brother works 2 doors down from where I live in Newark, and we never see each other. We'll go for a walk once in a while, but it's just kind of the demands of the day, and you really never find that opening. You kind of have your own routines. I like to go and read and work out at the gym on my off time, or if I don't, I really want to read. I often will go to the gym and just walk on a treadmill for 40 minutes at like 3 miles per hour and just read and read and read, because you just don't have those opportunities at home anymore. With watching my son in the morning, and with when I get home at night watching him eating, and then by the end of it, you just want to watch a TV show or two. And then by the time you get to bed, you might try to read, but I want to read books. So I want to read current events. So it never happens. So I really try to do that in the middle of the day. And maybe that's to my detriment. Maybe I should be seeing my family member. Maybe I should be interacting. Maybe that's its own form of content consumption, storytelling, oral storytelling, all that stuff. Maybe it's important to interact and to not be locked into the one-way discussion that is reading and talking to yourself through reading. But when you live in these different places, it makes no sense to ostensibly live in the same place, but to be far enough where you really don't see each other. It's almost like someone living in Ohio or someone living in Pennsylvania. Like, you see each other as much as people who lived in those would see each other. And at least when you have a family member living in Ohio, when they're coming to see you, they're probably going to stay with you, and you're going to really make a concerted effort for that 4-day weekend, for that week, to be with each other and to do things and to have activities. It's so weird how when you live in a similar place, when it's far enough away from each other, you never see each other. And you never even have that consolidated time where you're visiting at the place and you see each other for a bunch of days in a row. Very strange. It's like a very weird little system like that. It's a very weird situation. And so we had this idea with these different members of the family at different walks of life. We had this idea to go for a couple of days after Christmas, go to a hotel somewhere, go to a place where there's activities for little kids, and to be together for 2 nights and the better part of 2 days into a 3rd day. And to just find a place where we could chill. It really doesn't matter where you are. You might just stay in the hotel, but you can kind of be together. You all have your places where you can retire to for the night, your hotel rooms. But then you're together for breakfast, you're together for dinner, you're together for lunch. You have kind of built-in babysitters and your parents if the siblings want to go out at night. It's a nice situation, and it works for everybody. It makes your parents feel like the mother and father of a growing family and organization, and it gives them a chance to see all of their grandkids and their kids in one place. It's a nice situation. It's really good. And you really don't get that chance, at least we don't, in the winter. We have our home in upstate New York in the summer, and we will often try to get together for a couple of days up there. But for the past couple of years, those schedules have not aligned very well. So you end up just not seeing each other. It's very strange. So we made this concerted effort to do this. And I tend to be the logistical guy. So we made this decision to do this sometime in November, maybe around Thanksgiving. That doesn't give you a lot of time at a time when everybody else is taking vacations. It doesn't give you a lot of time to find a good place to go and a place that's going to be open and have vacancies. My dad kept saying, oh, we'll go to Mohegan Sun. And you start to look at that and you go, wait a second, Mohegan Sun with 3 kids, 3 and under. What are they going to do? None of us are really gamblers. Sure, there's good restaurants. Sure, there's this and that. But do we have enough for the kids? So that sort of didn't work. That argument fell apart on further inspection pretty quickly. So then we started looking around. I started Googling top resorts in Northeast. And I'm looking this place. I'm seeing places like Skytop. I'm seeing places like Great Wolf Lodge. And some of them you're like, I don't know if these are the kind of vacation places we want to go. Are the adults even going to have a fun time? Now, it's a selfish thing to think, but we think it because these kids aren't even going to remember this necessarily, but we will. And it's our off days and we want to have a good time. So we looked at Skytop. That's in the Poconos, about an hour west of where I live, hour and a half from my parents and my brother Mike in Westfield. He was into that. His wife was into that. Everyone was into it. But when you started looking at the location, it's cool. But it's sort of in the mountains and the weather is going to be really cold and snowy. And what are you really going to do? And when you have kids, the one thing, especially little kids, the one thing you start to realize you need to do, and I talked about this on my summer vacation episode, you need to have a suite hotel first off. And you need to have a suite hotel that's its thing, like an Embassy Suites, where they're not going to charge you an arm and a leg for the quote unquote suite. All of the rooms are suites. So the price is going to be maybe a little more than a normal hotel room, but it's not going to gouge you. It's not going to be like, oh, these are our normal hotel rooms. Oh, here's the suites. Now they're 100% more. No, you want a suite hotel that understands the value of a suite room, and that's all they serve. And maybe it'll be a $10 or $15 difference going higher if it's a corner room, if it's this, whatever. But basically, they're all in like a $100 to $25 to $140, $150 per night range. That's a good range. Suite hotels are so important when you have a kid because suite hotels with a door. This Skytop did not have a door. It had like these big rooms where it had like a living room, but basically the living room was just in the room with the bed. And that could be a cottage, that could be a hotel room, whatever it was. But you want the door because as an adult, you're going to put your kid down. For us, it ends up being around 7:30, 8 p.m. And you're going to put him down and he's going to do his routine and go to bed. And then if you're in the same room with him, you can't make any noise because it'll wake them up. So you got to have a door, and then you got to have sort of a parlor or a different room or a living room, kitchen area, all that, where you can close the door and just kind of hang out if you want. Especially when you're going on vacation on your own with just, for us, my wife, my child, you got to have that. And we found a great place in Vermont this summer that had a really big living room, kitchen area, and then the bedroom. And what we do is we put him in a crib. And my wife's good at this. She finds these places that you can rent nice cribs, and they deliver them and they pick them up and they give you bedding and all that stuff. We do still have him in a crib even after 3 years old. We don't want to upset the apple cart with that. It just works. He's pretty much potty trained, but he wears a diaper at night. So whatever. Look, you can't change Rome in a night. You can't change City Hall. You just kind of keep things. You make progressions in different places, but you don't just try to eat the whole cake, right? So you got to have these separate areas, and it works out. And we'll have him sleep in the room there, and then we just tiptoe in when we're actually ready to go to bed, and go to bed with no fanfare. We don't watch anything. Lights are out. Good night. And it works. When you wake up in the morning, he does stand up and go, hey, Dad, hey, Mom, and you're going to be up at that point. You're not going to be able to steal another 20, 30 minutes where he's in a different room just kind of talking to himself. He sees you, you're up. But hey, you win some, you lose some. That's just part of the game. So you got to have that separate room. It's just, it's tactic one. Got to happen. Got to have it. And so we're looking at this, and Skytop is like, okay, they have these little cottages. How, that's nice, whatever. But you're like, $1,000 a night per cottage, per room. It's getting up there, and the price just seems out of control. And it's 2 nights. And look, my parents are going to cover this. They're going to pay for it. It's important to them to do that. It's a nice thing they can do. They want the whole family together. But at some point, I don't want my parents being gouged at that level if something's not going to be perfect. And we weren't sure it was going to be perfect. And at least for our purposes, not having that separate room is kind of a deal breaker, because we can't even do anything. You can't even stay in the room with the kid. And think about the fact if he goes down at 8, we might go down by 11. That's 3 hours to be doing a lot of other stuff. And if you're in the same room, that's 3 hours you don't have, that you're kind of tiptoeing around in the dark, maybe trying to watch stuff with headphones. It's just, no, it's not. It's what's the point? You're going to pay a premium to have that situation when you could pay much less and then have a situation with separate rooms and maybe a hotel with like a bar and all this stuff and a lot of things going on. That would be it just didn't make a lot of sense. So I kind of made a pivot, and there's not a lot of time in the day to be travel agenting for my family. But I'm the one who tends to be kind of good at this stuff, and I think of a lot of the different angles to things. So I decided, you know what? Let's look at Embassy Suites. Embassy Suites are a game changer. Here's why. It's one of these hotels where every room is a suite, and they have some great amenities and add-ons. So they have this thing called a manager special. This is a game changer. From 5 to 7, or some do 5:30 to 7:30, you can go down into the kind of bar area. They have like almost a cordoned off area for people who are staying at the hotel. You go down to this area, you show a little slip of paper, and you could drink anything you want. Well, not anything you want. You can drink as much as you want for those 2 hours. No questions asked. Sure, you leave a tip or something, but it's pretty much an open bar. And maybe it's not top shelf liquor, but there's good IPAs, there's good wines, there's fine drinks you can get, maybe not top shelf, but lower shelf. Who notices after a while? And then they have kind of crudités and appetizers, like maybe chicken fingers or chips or pub mix or dips with like vegetables and kind of peanuts, all this kind of stuff. It's awesome. So think about the value you're gaining there. You're already getting the hotel room at a pretty good price. It's a suite. You're getting this little manager special, which is a nice thing to walk down into your lobby and get. And then you're getting a full cooked order breakfast in the morning. Think about corralling all the members of a family to go out and go to breakfast when you could just roll down. You don't got to put coats on, because, by the way, it was -5 up at Saratoga at points. We barely went out. It was that cold, and you didn't need to. That's the beauty of an Embassy Suites. So you go, you get up in the morning, you roll down on the elevator, and you could get full on breakfast. And I'm not talking like a Courtyard by Marriott where there's like an orange and a Danish in the corner. Not talking bad about that. The value is the value. That has its place. But you come down there, you got someone working an omelet station, working a waffle station, and you could get whatever you want. So I'm getting like the kitchen sink omelet. I'm getting the strawberry Belgian waffle. You got unlimited coffee, which is good. 2 kinds, bold and regular. You got fruit stations. You got yogurt stations, Greek yogurt, by the way. And you got toast. You got juices. You got everything. Unlimited. I think there's probably a contingent of people who just live off of the charity of a Embassy Suites when you go stay there. I think they just load up like hell on breakfast, maybe take back a piece of fruit and a Greek yogurt, which have a lot of protein in them, back to the hotel room, have that as like an early afternoon snack, and then come into the manager's special, drink, eat up on all the snacks, and maybe just have like an appetizer. And so that's what I really like about Embassy Suites. I just think they are awesome. They are value for money. They are the best. And so, on top of that, my family, whenever we go to Florida, which has not been the last couple of years, but I had gone for about 25 straight years with my dad and my brothers, whenever we'd gotten to Florida in the Tampa area, for many years, we'd go to the Embassy Suites right there in Tampa, right by the airport. Awesome. So we understood the value. Great place. Awesome. So we knew what the deal was. So I'm looking at it and I said, let me just look in the 100-mile vicinity of where we are in northern New Jersey. Even though we never see each other, we're still in the same vicinity. And let me see what Embassy Suites are around. So I saw there was a bunch kind of in middle New Jersey, and I wanted to cross those off because you want to get a little bit away from home. And so I saw there was one in Valley Forge, PA, which is outside of Philadelphia, sort of old war area, Valley Forge, you always hear. And I looked there, and then I saw there was one in Saratoga, New York. And so then I started Google mapping and seeing like what's in the vicinity of this Embassy Suites. And Valley Forge looked fine, but it seemed like a car type of thing. Like everything would have to be by car. And it was sort of like strip malls where a drive away to go get this or that. It looked fine, but I sort of think I've been to Valley Forge, and it's not like the best. It would have been fine, I'm sure. And then I saw Saratoga, and I'm thinking, boy, Saratoga, Christmas week, really nice. A lot of people in the summer go here. A lot of people of money. I know Bill Parcells has his place up there, and he's always gone there. Mike Francesa's gone there. They got the horses, and so I was like, well, that could be different. We haven't gone to Saratoga. And I started looking on Google Maps, and I'm like, oh, there's this Broadway and this Congress Street. There's a lot of action. There's movie theaters. There's restaurants. And little did I know, we never ended up really going. We went out to some automobile museum. My son loves he loves cars. So this automobile museum was great, other than the fact that he wanted to get in every one of these automobiles. And someone was telling me that to get one of it was like an old NASCAR car up to the second floor, it was like a $1 million car. And so as my son is hanging from like these old handles that would open the car door. And so it ended up being a disaster because all he wanted to do was go in them, and then we're telling him, no, you can't go in them. So not the best, but that was like the one time we went out, and then we took a drive up Broadway to think about all the places we could have gone. And we never ended up using that because an Embassy Suites is so great that you get everything done you need in there. So I told my mom, you know what? We don't have time to, as I said, travel agent this thing. Let's just lock it down. Let's get in there, get everyone on board. There was some siblings that weren't amazingly happy about it, but it ended up being a really good thing. So it's a 3-hour trip from where we live, just under 3 hours, and about 2.5 from my parents, more than 3 a bit for my brother Mike. But it was a bit of a reach, but it was within range, as long as the snow wasn't going to be crazy. And there was a lot of leftover snow there, but not too much in terms of the travel to get up there or coming home. So that was a blessing, because you can never count that blessing in the middle of winter when you're driving in New York State. It's a crapshoot, a snow crapshoot. So we chose that. She locked him down, because again, we just don't have the time to have a democracy going back and forth on who's here, who's what, who's that. And you do realize you're just getting your family up to a location. They're all in one place for this period of time when they're never in one place. Everybody is together in doing stuff. And one of the nice little things was we got up there. It was a new Embassy Suites. It was really cool. And we actually got a corner room, my wife, me and my son. And I love corner rooms. They're a game changer, because corner rooms make you feel like you're in an apartment. You got the you got the two dimensions of glass. So you can look out in one direction, then you turn, you can look out the other direction. You have like three dimensionality. I remember when I was with the Nets and we were on the road in Minnesota in the middle of winter in January. And for some reason for some reason I got a corner room in like an amazing hotel. And I remember I was like many floors up and I was looking out over the Target Center. Is it still called the Target Center? I think it is. And I was like, man, corner rooms are game changers. They just, they change the entire complexion of a stay. Like a room can be apples to apples exactly the same, but you add that one more dimension in a different angle and it just opens everything up. Like you have the coolest loft apartment in a major city. It's awesome. So we got that. That was cool. 5th floor. And it was great. Really nice, brand new. The manager special downstairs was cool. They kind of had an addendum to the manager special where you could get like any appetizers that the restaurant there, which was a nice little restaurant, a little slow on the service, but what can you expect in the middle of winter at a hotel restaurant? You could get appetizers for half off, and you could even get like top shelf liquor drinks for half off, so vodka martinis. But they had like an IPA, Southern Tier IPA on tap, and that was part of manager special, so that was really good wines. But right outside the hotel was kind of a dinky strip mall, whatever. But they had some good places. They had a liquor store, and they had this, I think it was called Three Vines Italian Bistro. And they were perfect because really good Italian food. I got a really good chicken parmesan, like a nice baked chicken parmesan in one of those big dishes where the whole thing is just consumed in the dish. Really, really good. I usually get acid reflux from certain foods like that. This one gave me none, which means it was clean cook. Everything was great. Good wines there, but they also, because we had a couple, my sister Maeve and her boyfriend Nick, who was along with this, good guy, tall redheaded kid. We always joke that he's kind of the ghost of Christmas future of our son Liam. Really nice kid, gentle giant. And they're vegans. They kind of toil with being vegans or vegetarians, and so they tend to be vegans, which is a very difficult thing on vacation because you have a big group. There's not a lot of time for custom orders, all that stuff. They're very good about it. They don't raise cackles about anything. They're not expecting people to make sure that they're fed all the time. They make do. They do fine. But this restaurant had fake, I shouldn't call it fake. They had vegan meatballs. They had all these different options. So it ended up being a perfect place. We did that on the first night. And so we went from manager special to that. And then when we got back, we got in the money time. My mom was going to come up after we put our son down. She'll stay in our room. And then we were able to go down to the bar area. And you just spend a nice night of time with your siblings who you really never see, outside of the grind of your day. And so we're just down at this bar in Saratoga, New York, quiet. There's not a lot of people around, nice repartee with the bartenders. And it was a lot of fun. So it was me, it was my sister Maeve, her boyfriend Nick, as I said, my wife Melanie, and my brother Tom. We're just sitting around there, one generation with the next generation, just having drinks. I introduced my sister to the glories of Moscato, which is a really nice white wine, a very sweet wine. It's an after dinner wine. You can have that at any time after a dinner, and it's just money. It's like bubbly, it's sweet, it's all that stuff. So it was a good time. And then you're just in this locked in area. And then no matter when you get up, it doesn't matter. There's no driving. It's warm. And Embassy Suites just have a nice open feel. And so we got up that night and went to bed, let my mom go back to her room. And of course we get up the next morning. Melanie gets the flu. Well, she didn't know. She didn't feel right. And I give my wife a lot of credit. She did not say, we got to go right home. She did not say, figure out where I can find a doctor. This woman is resourceful and resilient. She looks up a doctor. She finds an urgent care. There was actually one near our hotel, but it wasn't open for another half hour. She found one like 10 miles away or something, or maybe 10 minutes, maybe 6 miles or something. Goes there herself. Early in the morning, I'm with my son. She goes there herself, gets all these tests done, everything. It turned out she had the flu. And she gets back, and you're kind of in this decision where it's like, oh, you kind of right off the bat think, oh, we should go right home. But then you're kind of like, well, why? If she's in the heat of the flu, if she's right in the middle of it, should she be in a car for 3 hours? We were right next door to a CVS, so she was able to get her Tamiflu prescription. And for reasons of having difficulty with his youngins, my brother had to actually end up leaving that next morning. So a room opened up, and we kind of just sent Melanie off to this room, and she just kind of lived out in this room and was sick as if it was another room in your house. And she took her Tamiflu, went through all that. We went about our day doing what we could, and I would check in with her, see what she was up to. But it's a good woman. She did not force us to go home. She knew the importance of this event for my family. And I think logically we thought about the fact that, was it really best to go home right then? Or if you have the open room, if you got to get your rest anyway, if you're not going to be asked of much, is it better to just kind of hunker down there, do what you need to do, and then give it another shot the next day when you're going to go home? Now, I do feel bad because the next day I had to do calls in the car, and so she had to drive while she was sick, which was kind of a tough thing. But I don't know. It's one of those tough decisions, but she very nicely let us stay and did her best, and she did do a really good job. So that day, we went to that automobile museum. We got back, had a late lunch there at the hotel little restaurant bar. Got my son down way too late. He actually didn't end up napping. It turned out that he was having a lot of issues. He was having some, not to be graphic, some poop issues while he was napping, which is never a good sign. And he was really rough around the edges. Like, he was very edgy. And in the moment, you get really annoyed with it, and you yell and you scream and you get a little out of control. But when you have some time and some hindsight, you realize he's often in the throes or coming on with a sickness when he's acting that way, because he's not really like that. And it was, so you feel bad when you look back, but you almost got to use that and understand those indicators that it almost means he's getting sick. And so that day, put him down, called my mom in. I said, hey, would you mind sitting in here? I'm going to go down to the gym. I'm going to try to get a little workout in. Selfishly, you want to get some running in, some working out, because you're going to go right back to drinking, right back to eating. And you almost want to create that, that void, that opening that you can fill with the food and the drink. You don't want to head down to the bar feeling full. It's kind of not the way you're supposed to use exercise, but in certain instances, I like to use it for those situations when you really want to feel voraciously hungry, or you want to feel like a beer going down is almost like a quenching thing as opposed to something being added to the mix. And so I got down there. He didn't end up sleeping, but I got down there and I'm working out. I'm running on the treadmill, and my brother Tom walks in. So my brother Tom is 24, and he's always been this kind of very like independent kid. Like, he's almost an older soul in a way. He's always been this kid, even since he was a high schooler, who would just go for like 18-mile runs and just be in his own head and do his own things. And he's very independent. And I give him a lot of credit, because to be that age, to be that independent, and to kind of push through your own paths, it's a very impressive thing. And so this kid will just routinely go for insane runs, like 15 miles, 16 miles. And the day we got there, up to Saratoga, which was the Tuesday right after Christmas, he was gone forever in the middle of the afternoon. When we were waiting to go down to the manager special, he was gone forever. And the kid was at the gym, and he just casually knocks off a 15, 16 mile run over 2 hours. He runs at 8.8, or on the 8.0, it would be 8 miles an hour, which is really fast. I mean, it's not like fast levels at the New York Marathon, like the Kenyan runners run, but really fast. Like when I run at 6 or 6.2. Now, maybe it made me think I'm slow, and I've almost felt a challenge from being away and seeing what he's done to try to push the envelope, because I can't get myself back up into bigger mileage. I don't know why I'm having trouble. Maybe it's because I've been sick, been going through what we're going through, having my back issues, all that, but I got to get up there, because what he's doing is amazing. And so he knocked off 15, 16 miles on a treadmill, and he just has things in his ears, listening to music, he's listening to podcasts. He's clearing like full episodes of podcasts on one run. And like a lot of times you'll read about people who run, who train for marathons, And like that 16-mile run will be their big run at the end of their marathon training, like on a Sunday. And then they do it so they can rest for 2 days before coming back like the third day and doing like a 3-mile run to get their body back. This kid in the middle of the week just rolls out a 15, 16-mile run. And I had no idea. Treadmills apparently just stop at 2 hours. Like they're not programmed to actually just naturally go beyond 2 hours. So he sort of stopped at that point. He uses that as his natural stop point. So he had done that. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is unreal. You're on vacation. You're probably not sleeping as well. The next day, he actually got a massage. This Embassy Suites had a nice little massage place. So he got a massage. And I'm on the treadmill running. And I see him walk in, get on the treadmill. He did another 16 miles. A day later, 32 miles across 2 consecutive days. Where did this kid get his genes? I don't know, but it's almost had me really feeling a challenge when I've come home. And I can have my excuses. I could say I have a son. I don't get the same sleep. I don't do this. I'm getting up there in age, all this. But then you look at a guy rolling off routinely 15 or 16 mile runs on a treadmill. And what can you complain about? It really has given me almost an impetus to try to get my mileage up. And so that was really impressive to me. So as I said, Melanie was sick. We had a nice dinner at the hotel that night. And then the next day we got ourselves up kind of early. We wanted to get out of there because we wanted to get back home in time for my son to have get on his natural nap schedule, which is around 1 o'clock, start the process, 12:45. So it really means we had to get out of there by really 8:30, no later than 9, because you're going to stop a few times with a kid. So we are going on the road. We're about 25 miles south of Saratoga. I'll never forget the town name, Colony, with an IE at the end. And my son on this ride just kept saying, I need water. I need water. I need water. He never asks for water. Who asks for water? Except for my brother Tom running 15 miles. Who asks for water? Especially a 3-year-old. They're not asking for water. And he just keeps asking for it. He keeps asking for it. And we're like, oh, okay, that was great. He wants water. Then we're driving, and I'm on the highway. I was actually driving. My wife gives him the water, and then you hear a burp, and then the kid just retches over everything. He throws up 3 or 4 or 5 times in a concerted, confined amount of time right there. And it was absolutely disgusting. It went everywhere. It went all over his car seat. It went all over the front of my wife's back seat, all over the back of her back seat, and all over the floor and whatever was on the floor there, including she had some nice shoes. There was some stuff like bags of his cars everywhere. It stunk. We're still 2.5 hours from home. It's -2 degrees in upstate New York, around Albany, Colony, New York. And we've just been we just received a knockout punch. What do you do? It was insane. So I pull off the highway and I'm like, where do we go? This is weird. You're walking in with a kid just loaded with throw up. And the one thing you need to do as a parent is stop thinking what other people think of you. You got to do what you have to do. And you have to set the standard so your kid sees that it's okay to be in certain situations and not feel bad or feel guilty or feel like they've done something wrong. Sickness is sickness. So I get in my own head with this stuff and I'm trying to figure like, oh, I don't want to go to a gas station. Oh, we'll go to a Dunkin' Donuts. Oh, we'll go to this. And then my wife looks up on her phone. She sees there's a Bye Bye Baby right down the road. And so I'm like, oh, I guess a Bye Bye Baby. Okay. And then we're pulling in. I said, oh, a Target. Target's probably better. So we pull up to the Target. We were able to get a first spot right by the front. And we get him out, and he sort of is walking like someone who has like pooped their pants, even though he didn't. It was all down the front. It was just, I felt so bad for him. And he walks in, he's sick, he's knocked out, and we're like looking for the family bathroom. We don't want to go into the normal one. And there's this mother there, or maybe it was a nanny with a couple of kids, and she's just like, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. That looks so bad. And we're like, do you know there's a family bathroom? Of course, it was on the other side of the store. So we have to walk this poor kid because you can't hold him with all the throw up he's got. Well, I guess you could, but let's not all catch the shrapnel of this. We have to walk across the entire Target to get to this little family restroom. We clear him up. We put on some new clothes. We throw his clothes into a paper bag. And now we're 2.5 hours from home. As I said, -2-degree weather. And we're in Colony, New York. And so we need to kind of clean this mess up and read that as I do. And I say I do, not because my wife shouldn't, not because, or I shouldn't. No one is more, no one should be forced to do that, right? But my wife is sick. Again, she has the flu. My son is now sick. He's throwing up. It's -2 degrees. It's freezing. And so I have to do this cleanup. So I said, all right, we're in a Target. Let's get some disinfectant wipes. Let's buy some cheap towels. And we're going to have to make a go of this. We got to do our best with the smell. We got to do our best to clean up this thing, to hazmat this thing a little bit with the full intention of doing a better cleanup when we get home. But we got to get ourselves through this 2.5-hour trip. So I go outside and I got my disinfectant wipes, my towels, these bags. And it was so cold that throw up had literally frozen in the car, which was actually a blessing. Because for something like the mat, you could pull the mat out and just like doink it on the ground and then things are breaking off. It was so cold and I'm like, this might be close to hell on earth. To be in -2 weather, cleaning out a car. People have no idea what you're doing. I mean, people are probably like, oh, they're trying to get rid of a dead body. Like it looked like that. I got gloves on. I'm trying to clean. It's just absolutely gross. I'm trying to figure out what the threshold is for which it's good enough. And I'm getting like frostbite and I'm just like, this is a disaster. How do you get out of this? And you always get out of it. You always figure it out. It's not the end of the world. But I got it all cleaned up as best I could, sprayed the heck out of this car because we're going to have to now drive home and the smell wafting through it. It's just going to be gross. And so I got the towel in, we got him back in the car and we got moving. My poor wife had to drive because I had to do continuous calls for the next like hour and a half. I felt terrible. It was a bad, untenable situation. But what are you going to do? You can't cut off calls. Like these are important calls. But then again, your family's important. And so I got my son locked in with the Daniel Tiger, pro tip, download those shows where you can onto an iPad. So you have them for the kid to watch when things get tough. So I was using that for my calls because I'm like leading these calls and luckily he's watching Daniel Tiger because otherwise he'd be like, I got to talk. Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm running these calls on the New York Thruway with one part in India, one part in Newark, a client in New York City. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts and I'm trying to negotiate things because there's a technology consultant from Silicon Valley on who's trying to call us out for a certain process we're doing. And I'm like, I don't know what else I can do here. I don't know how much more I can handle. And this is my vacation. I'm not trying to complain, but oh man. So we ended up getting home. We made it through. He did end up actually throwing up again during his nap, which sucked. But, the rest of the week ended up just being kind of recuperating, convalescing. My wife and I had to cancel our New Year's Eve plans, which is, of course, our anniversary, our 7th anniversary, for those keeping note. And we had to cancel it. And I had all these things lined up. Like I usually do, you get a hotel that has a good steakhouse in it, like a Ruth's Chris, which was this one did. And then you set up massages. I was able to set up an hour and a half couples massage at like 2:30. So it was a perfect setup. Everything was perfectly set up on New Year's Eve. And it was hard to, it was the right call because even on New Year's Eve, I ended up getting some shrapnel sickness. I didn't end up with the flu. I got tested, but I was really sick. I had some like chills and fever and I just felt awful. Didn't feel right at all. But it wouldn't have been a good situation if we had ended up getting in there. And so we had to cancel it and we've just been convalescing. Here we are on New Year's Day, back to work tomorrow. And you got to take it different ways because you could say to yourself, oh man, this stinks. We wasted this off time. But you're also able to say, well, we were able to convalesce and recuperate without using sick time as well. A lot of this was during granted off time, holiday time that you don't have to take that you're given New Year's Day. And so there's kind of a plus and minus, but she was feeling real bad. And it was weird to be at home on New Year's Eve last night we decided to have Chinese food, opened up a Riesling because they say you should have that with Chinese, excuse me, that you should have that with Chinese food. And it ended up being nice, but I was in bed before the ball dropped, and my wife and I are actually sleeping in different rooms, which was a weird take to be putting her to bed on our anniversary and then moving to my own room. And I was awoken because there were these major fireworks going off. Why? I don't know. I mean, a New Year's Day is great, but do we need to set off fireworks for it in our neighborhood with kids sleeping, sick people sleeping? But it was tough. But you know what? There's always positives. And so we kicked our plans into January. We chose January 20th, so we'll see how that goes. I was able to pretty much reconstitute the same plans, and the upside, we're probably going to pay half the price because there was a premium for it being New Year's Eve. So there's an upside to that, and we'll be able to celebrate when everyone else isn't celebrating. So it'll still be nice, and it'll be here quick enough. It'll only be 3 weeks, and we'll be able to look behind us. I mean, it was almost like 2017 said, "You're not going out with this. This is going to not go out well." Just let's clean up 2017 and let's move into 2018. The one thing that was kind of cool, so as I talk about kind of what my wife and I went through, we were in our own different ways having a lot of trouble getting through the grief of it and the kind of mental gymnastics that you go through to live your normal life and pay homage to what happened and not feel like you're living someone else's life. Like you want to get back to normal. It's necessary to get back to normal in life because it keeps things efficient. If you have too many barriers popping up across the way, you have too many things you're thinking about, it makes you less of an efficient person on a daily basis. It makes you sleep worse. It makes you need more stimulants like coffee. It makes you try to make up for things during the day that you wouldn't otherwise. Grief is a tough thing to push through because it's like it makes everything you do at least 1.25% harder. It just does. It's very difficult. And often it makes it twice as hard or 1.5 times as hard. It's hard to explain, but it's almost a presence that's always there. And so you kind of want to see past it. We had a lot of trouble with it. We had holidays. We had our son's birthday. It helped us get through a bunch of it. But then when we got past Thanksgiving, we were just like, you know what? This is really hard. It's kind of affecting, it's a presence beyond our relationship. Not that our relationship is in trouble in any way, but we want everything to just get back. We want everything to be said. We want everything to be acknowledged. And so we decided to see a grief counselor. We went there, a lot of it being a psychology major, were coping mechanisms, were the kinds of things I was thinking through my head the whole time. But they're good to hear, and I think they were helpful for my wife to hear. But a lot of it was a lot of the same things I would think of on my own. Now, maybe she needed to say it to somebody else and not say it to me because I'm a passenger on this journey with her. But one thing that came out of it, something always comes out of things. And one thing that came out of it, because I was talking about how I had these terrible back spasms that I was going through. And I was saying that I think it was really tied to the grief. It was my way of grieving. And she said that's very, not common, but that's very probable. And she said, you know what, the one thing that was really helpful for me? Rolfing. Rolfing is a very important thing. I went to this guy in Morristown called David Thatcher, and he fixed my back spasms. And I said to myself, interesting. I've gone through every angle I can for my back over the years. I've had this tightness for going on, I think, 9 years. And then I had my terrible spasms in November and into December. And I did a lot of chiropractic. I went to see a back doctor. Nobody has real full-on answers for me that hit the nail right on the head. And Rolfing sounded interesting. And so the one thing that came out of this grief thing for me was an interest in this idea of Rolfing. You kind of hear the term, you don't know what it means. The actual term sounds to me like whatever is being performed, when in reality, it's some woman named Edith Rolf or something, who lived like... or Ida Rolf, some German woman from 1896 to 1979. So she was 83, right? So older woman, a little woman, I guess, and she just came up with this thing where you just beat the crap out of someone through targeted, like myofascial digging in a way. I had no idea really what it was. I didn't look it up. And from this session my wife and I had, she left it and pursued a session with this David Thatcher, this guy who has this method, this Rolfer that the grief counselor talked about. And she got it set up and then told me, all right, I got it for you. I have to tell you this before Christmas because the actual session is before Christmas. And I didn't look up on it. I didn't do anything. I just went. And the one thing she said to me was, it's 9:30 on Saturday, the Saturday before Christmas. You go, you have the morning. You do what you want to do. Maybe you could go see a movie for your Oscar stuff you like to do, or do a podcast about every year with Tim and Jamie. Why don't you take that? You can go have that morning, and I'll take Liam. I'll take him to swim class. I'll take him to some little music concert, some holiday music concert, and basically get back when you get back. I went, oh, okay, this is kind of neat. So this guy works out of a CrossFit studio. There's a few of them. One's in Montclair, and one is in Morristown. And on the day of the 23rd, he was going to be in Montclair. So I had to leave the house at about 8:30 for a 9:30 session. Again, I did not look up anything about Rolfing. And so I get to this CrossFit studio. And in Montclair, there's also an amazing movie theater, like one of these old time ones. And this theater routinely will have like 3 to 4 Oscar movies playing at any time. It's always the place that has the Oscar movies when no other place has them at the right times. And so I saw, oh, Lady Bird will play there. I'll go see that. I'll go do the Rolfing. I'll stop at a Starbucks and then I'll go in there. I'll see the movie, start chipping away at my list. So I got there just in time, about 9:30, met the guy at the door. It's in a CrossFit studio, which I came to learn, I think, is one of the first CrossFit studios in all of New Jersey. It apparently sets the standard for the state. And it was a cool one. It was just sort of in a corner lot off of a main street. A lot of action going on in there. I'm not a CrossFit guy. Haven't been interested in it, but it is like a dystopian Mad Max type deal when you're walking through, weight getting thrown, people doing all kinds of weird circuits, all this. And we're walking through, and this guy, David Thatcher, has a little, it's a normal looking massage room once you get past the CrossFit stuff in the back. So he's kind of talking to me about all of the things I experience, getting my kind of the intel on where I have my issues. And he says, all right, take off your shirt. And now things get weird. No, I'm just kidding. So he basically has you take off your shirt, and he stands about 8 feet in front of you, facing you, and just kind of tells you to relax and put your arms by your side. And he could see from that angle, he walked over and he kind of drew a line with his hand, which pretty much traced the entire muscle discomfort, which is a weird angle. It's like from the back top left shoulder, all the way through the back, through the middle, right into the middle. And then he's like, and your right chest. It doesn't even have, he goes, you have like a good amount of muscle, but your right chest, the inner top right chest, there's like nothing there. It's almost like that commercial. And I had said this and he agreed. It's almost like that commercial with the guy who's doing the bicep curls in the one arm and not the other. And he has like a bodybuilder's arm on the one side and then just like a couch potato arm on the other. He's like, it's missing there. So he's like, there's some weird muscle stuff going on. And so I'll tell you what, Rolfing was a revelation. It was amazing. Now, the after effects were amazing. And it was amazing in the sense that he was hitting things and we were speaking a language to each other that finally made sense to me with my discomfort. And he was finding things, he was explaining things that made so much sense. The pain was intense. Some of it was so overwhelming that you're almost like you're within one more time of him doing it from saying, please, please stop. And so he said to me, the pain is going to be a 7 or 8. If it gets to 10, tell me. And so you're like, oh, okay. So he's like, it's going to be painful, I'm telling you. And literally they dig like through each one of your rib cages to dig out muscles, because muscles get stuck in weird ways over time. And it's the muscles getting stuck and then compensations happening when you do normal tasks or when you weightlift, that over time, bad habits happen. And they almost, they almost compound upon each other. And so I had told him there was a time when I was running 9 years ago. I was doing a long 10-mile run on Edgewater down River Road. And when I was coming back, I stepped in some leaves, which I thought were just leaves with ground, but there was a hole. And I went down and I went straight down in a weird angle. That next morning, I woke up with acute back pain in my left side. Now, after that day, after that acute day, I never had the acute pain again, but I've always had the tightness. And he said it was that event that probably caused this and caused everything to cascade over the years. And because it was a very strange way to fall, that wasn't a natural way for your body to fall, it's never had a natural way to get it out. Because it's not like you're going to fall in a hole the opposite way to make things unjar. And so literally he was going through and just painfully with his thumbs and with his elbows digging muscle out. And then he was saying weird things. He's like, so he goes, your chest on the left side. He said that the pec major, the one on the big one on the front, and then the pec minor right behind it had actually fused together over time. And that fusion creates a situation where if you're doing bench presses, the pec major is carrying the pec minor with it when they're actually supposed to be independent. And when you're doing that, the pec minor is then pulling your scapula with it. So all of these weird compounding muscle things are happening. Then he said, your left quadricep is also doing the same things. Those fuse together. And I'm sitting there going, God, this is so painful. But man, this is like cathartic to be having someone speak to this. And it makes sense. And he's digging into my hip and it was pure pain. He goes, what a Christmas present you got. He goes, what's the nice one going to be? And for me, I know it's funny, but like, it was nice to have something. Once you get through the pain, fine. But it was really, really like fruitful to go through this. And I was saying to him, I'm like, how in the heck? I'm always like very fixated on how did people in the past get over this? And first off, people in the way past were not alive at 35, or they were the old people. But like, how did people get through terrible muscle spasms or different pains? And of course, people say, oh, they had whiskey or they ate bark, because bark is like aspirin or something, tree bark. And then he said this thing which just hit home. He goes, look, man, there's community. This is how people got through things in the past. This is how people get through things in the present. There's community. There's one person who provides something, and then you provide something that you're an expert in, and we all create this like kind of perfect circle of having everything covered. And you know, that really hit home. But Rolfing, man, like, what a crazy thing to go through. It was just a really, really interesting thing. And so why don't I call it there? Gotta really jump off. I think my son's getting up, but I'll talk to you all later. I'll get back on the horse here a bit more frequently, and we will talk soon. Thanks, folks.